Hello and welcome to this tutorial on deploying GPTs. My name is Jan and I'll walk you through a tutorial that will take you in a few minutes from zero to hero. There are two approaches to deploying your own GPTs, and today in this tutorial I'm going to go through the option through the GPT Store in ChatGPT. That's the option on the left. But if you read my book, there's going to be many examples about how to deploy GPT apps with Streamlit connecting to the OpenAI API. For both of those options, you can provide your GPT with a bunch of tools, and the example we'll be taking today will be to predict the weather or just get from a weather service. So I'm going to call it Hello Weather GPT. So first of all, let's go inside of ChatGPT, and I'm going to show you how you can create your own GPT. So there are two locations where you can find it. First, you can go to the sidebar, and as you can see, there's a bunch of GPTs that I have on the top left. You can explore more GPTs and go to the GPT Store here. And you can also find this from here with my GPTs. So let's just see here. I have a bunch that I've created already, and I'm going to just create a new one. So let's just do that. Create a GPT. So this time I'm going to call it WeatherBot, and it's going to get the current weather. So you can add a logo with a photo, or you can use DALL-E as a way to generate a small image. You can give it instruction, conversation starters. So let's say, what's the weather in Boston? Okay, and so you can see it's going to appear on the right-hand side. That's a preview of your GPT. And there's a bunch of capabilities you can give to your GPT. So knowledge, we're not going to give it any knowledge. You can simply upload files for that. You can use web search. That's one typical tool. And DALL-E for image generation. That's the one we've been using here to create a little logo. What we will be focusing on today is how to give additional tools through what is called actions. So I'm going to create a new action. Here we go. So we won't be using authentication for this action. That's a more advanced maneuver, and I'll create a dedicated tutorial for that. But for now, let's create a schema, and we'll just start from an example from weather here. So there's a bunch of things that we need to modify for you to be able to call an action. First, parameter URL, then the path, that is here, location, and the parameter here, again, name, location. So I'm going to be here going to a web service that I've already deployed, programming GPTs on render.com, and I'm going to go to the weather path because it's a very generic service here that I'm providing that has different services in different paths. And the parameter is going to be called city. So let's see if it's working. Let's just test it. So I'm going to accept calling GPTs on render. So as you can see, this is a very nice debug mode where you can see what's been happening here, calling my node domain. It can take some time if the service was not spin up, so it's going to spin it up. And the response here is this JSON format that is being formatted correctly by ChatGPT. So this is the goal for the demo today. What we'll do is essentially now replace this with your own tool. So I'll show you how you can create your own tool. For that, you can just check out the code that I'll be using. It is inside of my repo on GitHub in chapter 9. That's the chapter about deploying GPTs. This is the option for deploying on the GPT Store, and we will start with local GPT, and I'll tell you why in a moment. So here there's some sample code that we'll be taking, including this schema that you've already produced, and well, we'll start with this file over here. So you can open it up in your favorite development environment, in my case VS Code, and let's just navigate to the file. So here it is, sample weather, and this is a very simple URL that we'll be calling here. In this example, we'll be outcoding the API key because it's actually provided by the service. It's just a demo. It's actually always going to be giving you the same result back. It's just a way for you to test the service. So let's spin up here a command line, and we're going to navigate to chapter 9, local GPT. And now let's serve it up. So as you can see, this app, this Flask app, has been developed with this framework, and you can simply here click, and as you can see, this is running locally on your local host on your machine, and you can go to here. Let's just try this one. Well, we'll try Boston, but as you can see, it's gonna give you back London because it's always giving you back the same results. It's just a way to test the API. So it's working just fine. It's working on my machine, but now the challenge is how can you get it out of your machine? And this is where ngrok jumps in. So the workflow is going to be the following. So you'll be giving an input to ChatGPT. It's going to call this service. And what we'll be using here for local development is using a reverse proxy called ngrok. It's going to go inside of your machine, check in for the API and the city, and then getting the weather and returning the answer. We may see in the future how we can also do analysis to produce graphs or stuff like that with Code Interpreter. So let's introduce ngrok. So ngrok is this tunneling capabilities that enables you to essentially tunnel into your machine for local development. If you're on Windows, you can simply download here the zip file, and you can unzip it. Simply drag and drop the executable. Already had it, but it's only 1.6 megabytes, and now you should be good to go. So let's go back to my terminal. I am going to open a new terminal, and I'm going to be testing to make sure that ngrok is correctly, well, you can ask version. Let's see. Okay, so it seems to be finding it just fine. You can also check the documentation with help, and this is the command we'll be using. It's a very simple one. It's just going to establish a tunnel to your port 80. Now, in the case of our server, we're actually running on port 8080. So let's just change this parameter and give it ngrok http 8080. So just as simple as that, and like this, you're going to have a forwarding of your port to this publicly available URL. Here we go. So first time you visit this URL, you'll be advised that, okay, this is served by ngrok, but if you validate it, then it's no longer be appearing. And hello weather, so fine enough, you're inside of your local machine. So let's just test if this endpoint for the weather is working. And yes, it seems to be working fine. So now let's copy over this URL into our GPT. So we change this argument over here, and okay. Now let's test it by saying, okay, what is the weather in London? So I'm gonna allow it to enter my machine. It's talking to it, and sure enough, well, it's actually getting that this is a value in Kelvin, which makes no sense apart from scientists, I guess. And it's actually also trying to convert it, which is pretty nice. So let's see what's been happening here. So as you can see, we've had incoming traffic, and it's successful. That's why it's saying 200. So you've been able to connect ChatGPT to your local machine. So as you can see from this demo on the sample temperature in London, it's not super useful. And what we're going to do instead is we're going to create an account with this service, Open Weather Map. And while I've already created one, you can, well, issue an API key. So this is the one that I'll be using. Don't attempt to capture the screen and just reuse it. I'll be deleting it after the demo, so you should be creating your own. So let's go back to our development environment. I'm going to kill this server over here, and we are going to be reusing, so Control C, yep, here we go. Okay, and we are going to be reusing, so using a second file, this one here. So what I'm going to do now is, so I'm going to do something that you should never do, which is pasting your API key inside of a file, and especially not if you're intending to deploy a web service into production. But just to ensure that this is working fine, I'm going to do that just now, and I'm going to serve this this service now. Okay, this is working fine. Let's see here. So this is now enabling me locally to query other location and have actual prediction of, report of the weather, and it's also working from ngrok. So now let's see from ChatGPT. So anytime you want to be here, for instance, going back, you can make sure that, okay, everything is working fine. What's the weather in Boston? And sure enough, it's working. So now let me show you how you should be passing your API key through what is called an environment variable. So I'm going to here kill this server over here. I'm going to Control Z. I'm going to comment this line that is setting an environment variable, and I'm going to do that here instead inside of the terminal. So I'm going to use the set command in Windows. For Mac and Linux, it's going to be export. I'm going to say API key equal, and then pasting the API key. And now that I've done that, if I go and spin up my server again, I should still be able to get the same result. So it's working fine, and it's updating the time. All right, perfect. It's getting a little chilly here in Boston. So finally, since we don't want to be working off of our machine, this was simply for development purposes. What we're going to do is we're going to create our own tool and deploy it with a service called Render. So let me go and create a new Git repo, a GitHub repo. I'm going to call it new repo here, Weather GPT. I'm going to keep it public. I'm not going to add a README for now, but essentially I can also add a license. That's a good practice, MIT license. Well, you know what? Let me add a README and say GPT deployed on Render. Action. Okay. Now you can add files by uploading them or just creating a new file. But here is a trick. You can also go into the URL and type dev. This would be the same result if you enter dot inside of the page. It will take you to this web environment. And well, here for some reason I had already created something, so it's remembering it. But I'm going to create a main.py file, which is going to be here. What I have, I'm going to simply copy paste that. Okay, and I'm going to not set it to debug. Perfect. And now the final thing that I need is a requirements file, requirements.txt, which includes the two packages that I'll be using, Flask and Unicorn, which is a proxy that enables you to connect to your Flask server. That's a good practice when you deploy a Flask server in production. You want to have a proxy in front of it, and that's what we're going to do here. So perfect. Let's deploy GPT on Render. Okay, perfect. Now let's go to the Render website and let's create a new web service. You can create it from Git, especially if you've linked your account like I've done, and just select either a public repo or even private repos if you don't want to be sharing your code with the world. You give it a name, the language that it's going to be using. It knows that it's Python, and the branch, the region. This is US East for me by default. The root directory here. It's at the root of the repo, and here it's going to pip install of the packages, and here you simply need to change the command because I called the file main, so main and finding the app. Okay, and want to be calling this API key. And let's deploy the service. So as you can see, it's going to be cloning all of the files from my repo. It's going to be building it. The build is pretty quick, and then it's going to take about a minute for serving it up. All right, the service is starting, and let's see. Yeah, it's live. Okay, so I'm going to just test it. Hello, weather. Perfect. So let's test. All right, it's working like a charm. So now let's replace it inside of our GPT. Let's go back to our action. And instead of our ngrok tunnel, we're going to be here replacing it with this wizard GPT. Let's just test it. Awesome. So one final thing, if you want to be publishing this, you need to have a policy. I'm going to use the policy that I already published on my service, and we're good to go. Let's try again to create an icon with DALL-E. Perfect. Okay. Now comes the time when you can publish your GPT. So I'm going to publish it to the GPT Store and in the category programming, I guess. And ta-da! Perfect. It's been published. Now you can try it out. Thank you.